Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Sjælland in Denmark and revisit a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles, although I would say this brewery are known mainly for their IPAs these days, and oddly enough, this is a brewery that I really struggle to come across when I go over to Copenhagen. For what reason I don't know, maybe I'm looking in the wrong places, so let me know about that in the comments section below. That said, it is fairly easy to come across their beers through Systembolaget here in Sweden. They're releasing stuff regularly over here, and I do enjoy their stuff, so we're going to have a look at one of their latest Systembolaget releases today. I was quite excited when I saw this one, so fingers crossed it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Greve, which is to the southwest of Copenhagen on the southeast coast of Sjælland, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Alefarm Brewing. So this particular beer is called San Francisco Skies. It comes in at 6% ABV. They're simply describing this one as an IPA, but from what I gather, this one has a little bit more West Coasty character about it, which I will obviously enjoy. But yeah, curious to see how it turns out. This beer was released as part of the Local och Småskalig assortiment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for July of 2021. And yeah, I've had some really nice IPAs from these guys in the past, so I'm hoping that this one carries on in the same vein. So fingers crossed it's another good beer, and I hope you guys enjoy it, as I said earlier on. But yeah, let's crack on with the review then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Alefarm Brewing before, and I will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but usually quite regularly because I live so close to Denmark and I love my Danish beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes once again then to tell you a little bit about Alefarm Brewing. So Alefarm Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Greve, to the southwest of Copenhagen, on the southeast coast of Sjælland, the easternmost of the main islands of Denmark. But the company is the brainchild of Andreas Skødt Larsen and Kasper Tiedemann, who founded it together back in 2015. So Andreas had been a home brewer for quite a long time, and he worked for a period of time as a librarian as well, whereas Kasper has a very extensive background in the IT sector. He's actually also involved in various different companies and organisations, one of which is his own consultancy firm. But originally these guys based the brewery on a farm to the north of Copenhagen, hence the name Alefarm, but they soon moved the business to Koget to the southwest of the city, and it remained there for a couple of years. But for a long time, they were brewing their beers on a small 200-litre kit, which was intended as a sort of pilot transition kit, but they still managed to put out some really nice sour beers in that. I still remember trying a few of the very early Alefarm things, and they continued with that for about 2 years or so from what I remember. But a little bit later on, in 2018, they opened a new facility with a 20 hectolitre brewery in Greve, and they had a nice new canning line and everything like that, and from this point they started to export their beers abroad. But it was at this point though that Andreas left the company and went into brewing cider. So after this, they hired Mark Walewski to come and brew for them. He'd previously worked for Beavertown in London, but these days he's working for the Mikkeller London brewery, and at the moment the brewery is run on a daily basis by Kasper and his wife Britt, and they've been putting out a lot of different beers over the last couple of years. Like I say, these guys are really quite well respected. As of July 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 330 different kinds of beers. The vast majority of those are IPAs, but you will find things like Imperial Porters and Imperial Stouts. In the early days, of course, though, they were brewing quite a few different sour beers and stuff like this. But yeah, really nice brewery, these guys. Like I said, I've had some really good beers from them, but I don't know why I can't find them in Copenhagen. Need to figure that out and see where they actually release their beers. But yeah, I guess it's a little bit harder over in Copenhagen to find these things because you've got the free market rather than just going to something like Systembolaget. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Alefarm Brewing for the moment. This is probably my 12th or something like that, 12th review or so from these guys, but they're always releasing new IPAs over here in Sweden, which is a very nice thing. But yeah, if you want to learn more about them, of course, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. You can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages as well to learn a little bit more about all those 330 different beers that they've done. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a taste of the beer. So, as you can see, the artwork on this one is very nice, as you often get from Alefarm, of course. It's quite similar in style to what we've had before. You can see the nice Golden Gate Bridge there for San Francisco, but you can see on the back there is the Alefarm Brewing symbol, like the barn, which I think is very nice. But yeah, 440ml can. This one, I think I paid 50 Swedish krona for this. Maybe 55, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I paid 50 for this one. A Swedish brewed IPA that is equivalent to this would cost about 45, so there is a little bit of a markup on this one because it's an import. That's because the import company has to bring it over the border here to Sweden, of course. So that's to cover their costs. But yeah, that translates to roughly about €5, you know, £4.50 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of $5.50, $5.75 American. But for a 440ml IPA, that is pretty decent. But it tells you on the side here that this one has Mosaic BBC and Simcoe and Columbus in it. I'm guessing that Columbus will be the bittering hop, about 12% alpha acid, lots of big kind of floral spicy notes in there. Simcoe, another one, about 12% alpha acid, and a lot of IPAs it gives you a nice juicy passion fruity note, and then Mosaic is all about the big tangerine oranges. BBC, incidentally, from what I remember, that's quite a potent extract. It's like pure hop flour, if you like, and they concentrate it in pellets, if I'm remembering correctly. But it does say on the ingredients list here that there's barley, oat and wheat in this one, so I'm not 100% sure exactly what we can expect out of this. But a 6% IPA of some description with Mosaic, Simcoe and Columbus in the brew. Columbus will likely, of course, be the early edition bittering hop, like I said. But let's get it out into the glass and see how we go. There we go. Quite a lot of CO2 in this one. You can see it got a little bit excited as we opened it, but not too bad, I have to say. So let's go for it then and see how we got on. A 6% IPA of some description from Alefarm Brewing in Greve, near Copenhagen in Denmark. The head on this one is a little bit excitable, should we say. In fairness, the one thing is the can did actually feel a little bit solid when we were looking at it. But I guess we can probably let that settle down and then pour some more of it in a little bit later on. So let me just put the can here and we'll take a look at the appearance and stuff like that, because we can still do that. So as you can see, the head of this beer is pretty damn big. It poured with about two fingers or so of a frothy, I would say, creamy coloured head. Definitely kind of creamy rather than being pure white, that's for sure. But the colour of this beer is pretty nice. As you guys can see on the camera, this one has poured a lovely kind of bright golden yellow straw colour, kind of similar to like a Munich Helles or something like this, or a bright mango juice. I always like comparing IPAs to different colours of fruit juice, because that's what a lot of the New England IPAs really remind me of these days. But yeah, remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use. That determines the magnitude of the colour normally. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. An IPA like this will undergo a boil of roughly 60 to 90 minutes. It's quite interesting to play around with that, in fact. But if you add any adjuncts or do any barrel aging to the beer, that is also going to affect the colour as well. But when it comes to IPAs, that's not really at play. Those last two factors tend to apply more to sour beers rather than anything else. But yeah, as you can see, a lovely bright golden yellow colour, this one, which looks very, very nice. And you can see it's got a little bit more of a kind of natural haze to it, actually. So yeah, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oat and the wheat content, and that varies from brewery to brewery and recipe to recipe. There's no real rule about how much haze you're going to get out of these beers. But yeah, it is kind of interesting in that sense. But yeah, I like how this beer goes about its business, that's for sure. It certainly looks the part of a kind of modern IPA, and it seems that the head is calming down a little bit, so I guess we can put a little bit more in and just see how it behaves and have a wee look at the aroma. Yeah, it seems to be alright now, actually. Head isn't expanding too much. We've just got to be careful with the pour and respect it a wee bit. There we go. Still building up. I do wonder if this beer's been sitting in the warehouse a little bit, and maybe that's why it's behaving as it is. But yeah, we'll try and get all of it in the glass before we actually have a taste of it. But at this point, it actually looks like, you know, quite a nice pour, to be honest with you. I think we've got the vast majority of it in the glass, and you can see that it's getting hazier and hazier, obviously, the more that we pour of it. But yeah, let's take a look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of appearance when you consider what style it is. But yeah, aroma wise then, let's see if we can shoot it up. Yeah. First impression of the beer then. A little bit difficult to smell because of the head, of course, we've got to keep that in mind. But yeah, first impression of the beer then. It comes across as a quite soft and bready IPA, this one, which indicates it leans a little bit more towards the barley malt in my mind. As I've told you, you know, when it comes to the West Coast IPA, and in my mind there's two different directions you can take it. It can be a little bit more kind of bready and biscuity, or it can be a lot more kind of oily and caramelly. But this one I think is going to be more of a sort of hybrid rather than anything else, so probably a slightly more bitter version of a New England, if you like, but with a little bit of brown sugar and stuff into it. But when it comes, pardon me, to the New England IPAs, they've got a little bit more, they've got quite a few more different directions you can take them in. They can be a little bit more kind of farmhousey and yeasty, they can be a little bit more kind of rye leaning and grainy, wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they can be a little bit more kind of brown sugary leaning. First impression of this particular beer is that it's got a very soft, kind of white bready backbone to it. There's a little bit of bread crust in there, of course, and there is a degree of sweetness in this in the aroma of this beer as well, actually, from the malty side of things. But yeah, it does come across as quite soft and quite fresh. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer is a lovely soft white bready character. There's a nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty element to it as well, which I really enjoy. But you can also pick up a little bit of the kind of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose too, I would say. You are getting a little bit of that. But I think the wheat is also going to some length to sort of smoothen out the whole beer itself. So yeah, the aroma of this one, I think, is actually very, very nice. So that's worth bearing in mind with this one, that's for sure. Yeah. Lovely stuff, really is. But yeah, as I say, with the backbone of this one, soft white bread in there, good little bit of a bread crusty quality. You can feel the smoothness of the wheat, a little bit of wheaty bitiness in there. You can smell a little bit of that oaty smoothness right enough, but that's quite minimal. The whole beer comes across as kind of soft and barley malt leaning and bready, which if it's described simply as an IPA rather than a New England IPA, that is kind of what you want. But you're also getting a fair little bit of sweetness in there. There's a lovely little bit of a kind of there's a lovely little bit of a more kind of biscuity, caramelly sort of thing. So there's a lovely McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. There's a nice little bit of a sort of more kind of straight up caramelly note in this one. I do also get a little bit of that. I do also get a wee bit of the kind of butter candy, butter candy Werther's Original type vibe in the base of this beer as well, which is quite interesting. So yeah, wee bit, quite a few things going on in the base of this beer, I have to say, but it kind of smells a little bit more like a hybrid. It's got a bit of the sweetness and biscuitiness that you'd expect of a West Coaster, but it does have some of the more kind of bready and wheaty elements you'd expect of a New Englander. This one is definitely more of a hybrid than a West Coaster, I would say. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. I think we've covered the yeasty and malty side of things of the beer fairly well. So on the green part of the beer, green component then, there's a lovely little bit of a kind of earthy note to this one. I think Columbus is going to give you that, of course, and there's Mosaic in this. Mosaic will give you a wee hint of earthiness as well, but the green component to this beer is not too pungent and kind of not too aggressive either, which I really enjoy. But yeah, the aroma of the beer itself, the green component is quite nice. The more you smell of it, it actually does get a little bit more pungent, so you can smell a little bit of that kind of spicy floral aromatic sort of thing underneath, which I really enjoy. But there's also a lovely little bit of a kind of brighter grassy, and there's also a little bit of a lighter kind of grassy citricy element to this one as well. Citrusy, I should say, not citricy, that's sour. But yeah, you do get a little bit of that kind of citrusy, zesty kind of quality from the grassiness on this beer as well. But nice bright floral notes, but underneath you can get a little bit of the spiciness of the Columbus. Columbus, of course, is known for that big spicy backbone that it's going to give the beers. But yeah, lovely stuff in terms of the green component in this one. But again, quite sort of soft in a sense. Fruity side of the beer then. It is kind of what you would expect. The Simcoe, I think, and the Mosaic, really, it's an age-old kind of combination, and it works. It certainly does work. So yeah, on the on that fruity side of things, then there's a lovely sort of there's a little touch of oiliness to this beer on the fruity side of things. You can smell that straight away, but there's a good kind of still quite sweet, but still kind of slightly pungent passion fruit to this one, and that's the Simcoe. Simcoe can behave in different ways depending on what malt base you put it with. If you give it a sweeter malt base, a more kind of brown sugar leaning one, it's going to give you a little bit of a more oily character to it. But if you put it in a straight up, wheat and oaty malt base, it's going to give you a big soft juiciness, and I think it's giving you something in between in this particular beer. But you're also getting those kind of soft, juicy tangerine elements to this one, which I really like, and a little touch of pineapple as well. But I really enjoy how the aroma of this beer comes off. It's very straight shooting, bit of tangerine, bit of passion fruit in there, and then you're also getting a wee touch of pineapple as well, actually. So this is quite a straight shooting beer in a lot of ways, this one. So I have to say, I'm just curious to see how it turns out in the flavour. So let's put the last little bit of it in the glass, then we can crack on and have a taste of it then. I'm just curious to see how it behaves with the final pour. That's alright. That is alright. Look at that. It's actually poured just quite nicely. So there we go. The Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. So yeah, this one is the San Francisco Skies, a 6% IPA of some description. We'll figure it out from the taste. From Alefarm Brewing in Greve to the southwest of Copenhagen on Sjælland in Denmark. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that's somewhere. It's definitely somewhere in between a New England and a West Coaster. First impression, malt base. There's a wee bit of the breadiness of the New England and a wee bit of the bite, but it starts to lean more towards the kind of slicker West Coasty note when you go into the aftertaste. So the malt base, I'd say the malt base is about 80% New England, but the hoppy side of this beer is really leaning more towards the West Coasty side of things. So this is an interesting hybrid, this one. I think I would call this a hybrid IPA. But that works. We've had these kind of things from Alefarm before, actually, so not a surprise. And we have had ones as well that they've called straight up West Coast IPA, if I remember correctly. But yeah, you always get a solid IPA from these guys, regardless of whether it's a West Coast or a New England or some of these hybrid ones. I need to try a black IPA from them. I don't think I've had a black IPA yet, come to think of it. Although I'll say that, check the list later and find I have. But yeah, if I haven't, that's something that I do want to try. But yeah, this is another solid beer from them. So thumbs up to Alefarm once again. This is why I enjoy having at least one beer from these guys a month. Yeah, interesting stuff, this one. It does get a little bit more slick the further that you go into the aftertaste with it as well. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? Where do we start with this beer? So in terms of the malty backbone then, we'll go through the beer in the order that we usually do. Straight away across the middle of your palate, you can feel that nice sort of white bready backbone to the beer. The bready side of this beer almost has a little bit of crispness to it, which I can certainly enjoy. So yeah, nice kind of crisp white bready backbone. But yeah, if you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of more bread crusty thing in there. So yeah, you've got that soft white bready backbone and a wee bit of bread crust. There is a wee touch of, you can feel that on top of that soft barley malt bready layer that's there. There is a touch of graininess in there, but at the same time you've also got a wee bit of a kind of wheaty, you've also got a little bit of that wheaty bitiness in there too, which I certainly enjoy. But yeah, I really like how that malt base comes across. It's actually really nicely balanced in that sense. It's got a wee bit of bite to it, but it's got a bit of smoothness and a bit of crispness, but you also get a wee bit of sweetness on top. So yeah, crisp white bready backbone, bread crusty elements either side of that, but then on top of that, as I say, a little bit of a kind of smoother wheaty layer, and you can feel that that sort of thickens up a wee bit the further that you go into the aftertaste. But on top of that, you've got a little bit of a kind of smoother oaty sort of thing. So yeah, you can feel that nice kind of smooth oaty layer coming out of the beer, and then sitting right in the middle of your palate. Sitting right in the middle of your palate there, you've got that more kind of brown sugary sweetness coming out of the beer. In a lot of ways, this beer is quite sort of straight shooting in a sense, but it's really layered and it gives you everything that you would kind of want from a sort of hybrid IPA, if we can call it that. So in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's a wee bit of a slightly concentrated caramel brown sugar there. That's the boozy part of the beer, of course. So there's a concentrated caramel bit right in the dead centre of your palate, but as you move further out from that, it becomes a little bit more kind of Werther's Original like, a little bit more kind of butterscotchy, and a little bit more kind of butterscotchy leaning in a sense, actually. So a little bit of that butter candy, butterscotchy type thing. Then as you move further out towards the kind of biscuity edge, or the extremities of your palate, I should say, it gets a little bit more kind of biscuity and like a McVitie's digestive sort of thing you're getting out of this one. But yeah, I think that covers the middle third of your palate quite nicely in this one. So a good balance between a kind of New England backbone, but it does give you a wee slight touch of a kind of West Coasty sweetness in the middle of the palate. I would say that about it. But yeah, interesting stuff for sure. But on the back third of your palate, then we've covered the middle third of your palate. Border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a nice kind of more bready build up there. There's a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty and grainy sort of thing. So I do enjoy that. But the base of that back third of your palate, definitely a little bit more of a kind of grainy, brown bready sort of thing in there, and a bit more of a kind of, you can feel a little bit of the kind of wheaty smoothness and a bit of a wheaty bitey character on top of that. Then on top of that you get the more kind of airy yeasty notes out of the beer. But I do find, yeah, the back third of your palate, graininess is a bit more prominent. Graininess is a little bit more prominent, and the sort of wheaty bitiness is a wee bit more kind of prominent in there as well. But yeah, sitting on top of that, of course, you do get the more kind of wheaty, bitey elements just right at the back of the tongue. But on top of that, as I say, you get the more airy, yeasty notes in there, so you can feel that sort of farmhousey, yeasty kind of quality out of the beer. So when you start from the back third of your palate, you can feel that the flavour just condenses down a wee bit. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, you've got a nice, more compact, squashed, bready kind of element to it. So yeah, I really like how that goes about its business in this beer, that's for sure. The kind of malty, yeasty backbone of this one, like I say, I find it to be about 80%, probably more, New England if you like, but then there's a wee bit of the kind of West Coast sweetness in there. In fairness, it does give you a wee bit of the kind of more crisper bready notes that you might expect. Well, West Coaster as well in that sense. So yeah, interesting IPA this, and that should be the main takeaway. But let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer. And the hoppy side is definitely more West Coast than New England, I would say. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corner of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of, on the back corner of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of earthiness in there, but as you move further forward from it, As you move further forward from that, you start to get a little bit more of a kind of herbal quality in there, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a more kind of floral, aromatic sort of thing in there. You can feel a bit of the spiciness of the Columbus in there. Columbus obviously is the bittering hop in this one, the early addition hop. Remember, the bittering hops are the ones that are added early on in the boil, then your flavour and aroma hops are the things that are added in the last half hour or dry hopped in later on. So the Columbus, I suspect, is the bittering hop in this one. But round the front curve of the palate, you do have a nice little bit of a kind of zesty, grassy sort of thing, and you can get that from Columbus, but I think the other two hops might contribute a little bit to it as well. But green component in this one, bright and floral, but at the same time a bit kind of spicy and things too, which is your trademark of Columbus. So I like that about this beer, that's for sure. But yeah, front third of your palate with this one then, and all the fruits and stuff like that. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate in this beer, again you get a little bit of a bready build up and a wee bit of a bread crust. Then the base of that front third of your palate, you can feel a nice kind of smooth bready character in there, and you can feel a little bit of the kind of wheaty bitiness too. But on top of that, you get that nice kind of slightly oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. At the back of that front third of your palate, you get a wee bit more of a kind of pungent passion fruity note. Then as you move further forward, there's a wee bit more of a kind of juicy passion fruity note, I would say. So you're getting a wee bit of the kind of more West Coasty side of Simcoe in this one. Like I said, Simcoe for me is a little bit more oily and a more kind of brown sugary orientated malt base, but in a breadier orientated malt base that really comes across as a bit more juicy. So you're getting a mix of both here, but I think the further you go into the aftertaste, it leans towards that more oily character. But as you move further forward onto that front half of the front third of your tongue, it is a lot more about the mosaic, and you can really feel that big tangerine kind of note coming out of this one, and it does have quite a bit of a zesty kick to it actually, and I'm guessing that's maybe coming from the BBC. Like I say, I'm pretty sure that's like a more concentrated hop extract that goes into the pellet in there, and pure hop flour potentially. So again, if you know about that, correct me in the comment section below. But the oily tangerine notes in this beer really have a bit of zestiness, and it almost goes to the point where it feels a little bit slightly menthol-like in a sense. The zestiness gets quite powerful, I think, on that front half, pardon me, of the front third of your tongue there. So I like that. But an age-old combination, Simcoe and Mosaic are very well known to work together. But yeah, the fruity notes in this beer are slightly more oily, I guess we could say. But I think that kind of summarises the flavour of this one quite well. So we can round off the review by looking at the mouthfeel. So yeah, this beer, pretty much right in the middle of the spectrum. Carbonation is a little bit crisper in this one, of course, but I think the can's maybe been sitting for a little bit, so it's maybe not in its prime, this beer. So we have to remember that. So the carbonation is a little bit crisp in this one, but the beer overall has a bit of smoothness behind it, a wee bit of crispness, as we say, and just a wee touch of a slightness. It's definitely, stylistically, it's definitely a sort of West Coast beer on the hoppy side of things, but a New Englander in the kind of malty backbone actually. So somewhere in between. It actually gives you a fair whack of both. It's almost like a kind of 50-50 in a sense. But in terms of the hoppy bitterness in this beer, what would we say about that? I think this one could be like a 50-60 IBU beer. Now the thing you also have to remember is that if a beer sits for a while like that, the green side of the hops are going to be kind of amplified a little bit. You get more spiciness and all that kind of thing out of the beer, and I'm wondering if that's playing a role with this actually. So I need to bear that in mind with this one. So you do get quite a bit of hoppy bitterness out of this beer for me. I think about 60 IBUs potentially, but the malt base, as I say, has a nice little bit of crispness underneath. There's a wee bit of a smooth bready sort of thing and a wee bit of a kind of bitey wheat quality, as I say. So the backbone is definitely a bit more New Englandy, but there's a wee bit of a kind of West Coasty sweetness there sitting on top of it. But the fruity side of the beer is definitely a little bit kind of lighter and slicker, and maybe a wee touch more oily, like a West Coaster is, rather than being the soft, juicy kind of thing you'd associate with a New England. So an interesting hybrid, this one. I'd say it's a sort of 50-50 West Coast New England But malt base is more New England, hoppy side of the beer. It's definitely more West Coasty. But yeah, I think on that note, we can round off this review. An interesting beer, this one, and always cool to review new things from Alefarm as well. But yeah, this one was the San Francisco Skies, a 6% IPA. Coming in from Alefarm in Greve to the southwest of Copenhagen. Really enjoyed this one. So thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Alefarm Brewing. Do let me know any other Danish breweries I should be checking out, because I know there's new ones popping up over there all the time. But it's been really cool to review a beer, to review another beer from these guys. I hope you guys enjoyed my take on this one, and I will catch you guys in the next review very soon. The San Francisco Skies, 6% IPA from Alefarm Brewing in Greve to the southwest of Copenhagen in Denmark. Slange, skull, cheers, and have a go at this beer and see what you think. See you in the next review.